All right, what is going on, guys? I don't know if anyone's in here yet. Doesn't look like it. If there is, hopefully you can hear me. If there's anyone in here, let me know if you're having any audio problems. But I'm back. Yeah, I was gone for a long time. I'm sorry I haven't, posted any videos in a while. It's been over half a year. Like I last time I posted a video was before Endgame, and I just kind of had a lot of shit going on in school and work and transferring schools, and I'd lost a little bit of the motivation to it. I was kind of getting sick of the same old reviews over and over, and then I thought I'd take a little break. But I'm back now. I don't exactly know what that entails. Don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I know that I will be posting more stuff. Not exactly sure what it is, if it's going to be the normal review format or not. But I know I like doing rankings, and I figure this is a good way to kick off the year and kick off me being back on YouTube. So before I get started, obviously I haven't seen every movie this year. There were like a couple thousand new releases or something between theaters and Netflix and Amazon and all its streaming and all that stuff. I only saw 50. So it's obviously a pretty low number compared to even like a lot of reviewers and stuff, but compared to like normal people, I think it's quite a bit. As far as things that I wanted to see this year, I'm still missing out on 1917 because that hasn't come out yet, wide where I live. So I haven't been able to see that yet. Same with Just Mercy. As far as I can remember, those are the only two that I have not seen yet because I haven't had the chance. Other than that, Marriage Story I missed as well. I missed Honey Boy. Um, there's probably a few more, but I saw for the most part most of the movies that I wanted to see this year. I skipped a lot of the bad ones. If there are some movies that I maybe thought I was going to see, and then early reviews came out and they were so bad, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll skip on that one. So just thought I'd preface this with that. That being said, let's get started. I got my trusty old letterboxed ranking up on my phone here. So number 50, dead last for movies I saw this year is The Fanatic. This movie's terrible from beginning to end. It's not only the worst movie I've seen this year, one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. John Travolta is in this movie. I don't know why he is. I kind of feel bad for him because it seems like he's trying. It really does. I like the guy. I hope he does something good in the future because I really liked him in Pulp Fiction and Face Off and stuff like that. But I just don't know what he's doing with his career right now because this role is bizarre. He gives a really hilariously bad performance. I'm not, like I said, I don't know what he's doing in this movie, and he kind of plays a character who's got some kind of mental disability, and he's like obsessed with his celebrity. So he ends up following him around and stalking him, and a bunch of shenanigans happen after that. And I just, I don't know. Like the first line that comes out of his mouth, his character in this movie is "Can't talk long, gotta poo," and he's walking around saying random stuff and like poppycock, and it's like, what is going on here? This is so odd, and it's not the kind of bad that I feel like I wasted my time. It's the kind of bad that you kind of should see at some point just because it's so weird. I mean, this movie, the dialogue is terrible, the performances are terrible, the ending is really bizarre. I'm not sure exactly what they're trying, like, what's the message of this movie? Because everyone in this movie is a bad person. Like, no one you really want to root for, and you kind of feel bad for him, but at the same time, he's doing some really bad things. And then the end of the movie, they kind of try to make you feel bad for him and make him like he's the good guy. And like, wait a minute, he just did a bunch of really shitty things. I don't understand why you're trying to make me like him at this point. And it's got like this really weird voiceover by this girl who's like his friend, and she makes some really weird decisions, like telling him about star maps, and then gets mad at him when he uses maps to find this guy's house. So just a really bizarre movie, but it's hilariously bad. It's not boring bad or anything like that. So number 49, second to last, is Serenity. This movie sucked as well. I thought it was going to be decent. When I saw the trailer, I'm like, okay, Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, the premise is pretty interesting. Unfortunately, when I actually watched it, it didn't give me what I thought it was going to give me. It didn't give me what the premise promised at all. It gave me this really weird movie with some weird performances, and the twist that happens about 2/3 of the way through the movie is one of the most bizarre twists I've ever seen in a movie, not in a good way. You're like, what? I can't even, I don't want to tell you what it is. This is another type of bad movie that should be watched at some point, especially if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it for free. But just so bizarre. I've never seen anything like it. and that is definitely not a compliment. From the first about 20 minutes of the movie, 20 minutes in, they say something. I'm like, ooh, that's weird. I don't think this is where this movie was going to go. And they go even further and further with it. And by the end, they make it completely clear what happened. They leave nothing up for interpretation. And that, to me, makes it even worse because it makes absolutely no sense. They tell you everything, and yet it's still confusing as hell. So, slightly interested at first. And then as it went along and eventually the big twist came around, I was just so baffled in all the wrong ways. So, Serenity is number 49. Number 48, and this is going to probably piss some people off because I know a lot of people like this movie because it's like an art house, metaphorical, don't exactly know what happened in the movie. And I feel like a lot of film students and stuff like that like this movie, but I did not. And that is The Lighthouse. I hated this movie. And I really wanted to like it because so many of the reviewers that I follow liked it. Chris Stuckman gave it an A+. First A+ he's given in a long time. So went to see this movie with high hopes, good actors in it. And I'll give the actors credit. They had good performances. That's about the only good thing about this movie. The characters themselves, I didn't care for. Neither one of them had any redeeming quality. So it was hard to get behind either one. It was just so bizarre with everything that was happening. I have no idea what actually happened. No idea what's going on throughout the entire movie. And some people like that. That's fine. And the ending didn't really give you any answers or anything to, make the whole thing worth it. So it kind of felt pointless to me. It felt really self-indulgent, really pretentious. I didn't care for this movie whatsoever, The Lighthouse. So number 47, another one that a lot of people actually liked, and that's Aleta Battle Angel. I was not a fan. I think that the special effects in this movie are fine. People are acting like they're so, revolutionary or something and should get nominated for Oscars. Maybe. I thought they were kind of off-putting. I mean, the character of Aleta looks kind of weird. I think the performance was good by the actress. I think she did a pretty good job, but all the characters besides Aleta to some extent were very bland, particularly the boyfriend character. I did not care for him at all. And the dialogue and the interactions between them were horrendous. And it was on the level of like Anakin and Padme in the prequels type stuff. And to me, probably even worse. It was really bad. And I didn't care for that at all. I thought the action scenes were fine. I mean, it's hard to even tell what was going on at points. And I just couldn't get into the storyline. And by the end, Aleta goes through some stuff in the middle, which is good. But by the end, she becomes kind of overpowered. And she destroys the main villain in like 2 seconds. And the main villain was also really generic. So this movie just really forgettable to me, and I get that some people like it because it was entertaining, had some good action, but I just didn't care for the story or the characters whatsoever. Then number 46, speaking of forgettable, Men in Black International. If any movie has the right to be called forgettable, it's this one. I did not see this in theaters. I had really no intention to once the first reviews came out and they were saying how forgettable it was. It's exactly what this movie is. I like Men in Black 1. 2 is okay, and actually it's pretty bad. Men in Black 3, I'm a fan of. So this one, they changed the actors. No more Will Smith, no more Tommy Lee Jones, which is fine because they replaced them with Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson. If you've seen Thor Ragnarok, you know that they're good together. And somehow this movie manages to make Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson bland, which is really hard to do. Their characters they skip over a lot of backstory with their characters, and they kind of just tell us things instead of showing us. And we're like, wait a minute, I think it would have been nice to actually see that. And they just kind of skip over a lot of it. The action scenes are not memorable at all. There's some weird CGI. The dialogue is pretty bad. I hardly remember anything about this movie, and I watched it a few days ago just in time for this list. So pretty disappointing, especially considering F. Gary Gray directed it, who I think is a really good director. You can't see his stamp on this movie at all. So it must have been some studio meddling or whatever. But one way or another, this movie did not work out at all. So number 45, another one that I watched pretty recently in preparation for this video, and one that a lot of people really like. I did not care for it, and that's Ready or Not. Every reviewer that I follow liked this movie. So I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot. Maybe it'll make my top 20 or something at the end of the year. Not even close. this movie, it had me in for a little bit, about 20 minutes in the middle of it. The beginning was weird. I didn't know what to think of it at first, and then it had me in for a little bit in the middle. There were a couple intense scenes, some gory scenes that actually worked, and then you get to the end, and it just goes so bizarre and so insane. There's like a supernatural twist in there, and I get that it's like satirical and trying to show these things in an over the top way, trying to portray real life messages and issues in a ridiculous over the top way. And I just didn't care for it. Especially the very end, where if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. I'll just say explosions, or I'll leave it at that. So odd, so bizarre, and I just didn't. It was way too far for me. I have the same issue with Cabin in the Woods, which a bunch of people also like. I'm okay with satire. Just when the most of the movie is, for the most part, realistic, and then they go so bizarre with the ending and so weird and so over the top, it takes me out of it. And it's not something that I like. A lot of people do. Fine, just not my thing. So number 44, pains me to say this. It really does. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. This is a very disappointing movie to me. I was not super excited for it anyway. The trailers didn't really sell me. I think bringing back Palpatine was an odd choice, but I had my trust in JJ because I really like The Force Awakens. That's like in my top 3 Star Wars movies. So he was directing it. So I'm like, okay, I trust him. He'll figure things out. He did not. What he tried to do instead was kind of damage control for The Last Jedi. Tried to retcon everything from The Last Jedi and say, oh no, Rey's actually this, and this is actually that, and it just happens all so quickly and unearned, and it feels like 2 movies crammed into one. That's my main issue with this. Everything is so rushed, so unearned, and there's just way too many things going on. There's way too many conveniences in this movie. Like, one thing in particular, I won't get too specific with it, but they all land in the same place after getting shot down on different vehicles. If you've seen the movie, you know which part I'm talking about. Then they just happen to find the dagger that she just happens to be seen in the right spot. Come on, that's way too much. I didn't like what they did with Palpatine. I thought, and JJ said that Palpatine was in the plans all along to come back. No, he wasn't. Absolute bullshit. There was no way that they planned this, because it felt so forced and so retcon. Like there's no way they planned any of this. And that's my biggest issue with not just this movie, but this whole sequel trilogy, is they did not have a plan. JJ did 7, Ryan did episode 8, and he went completely away from what JJ was doing. JJ does episode 9, goes back to what he wanted to do, and retcons all Ryan's stuff. That is not how you do a trilogy. You have to have a plan. Use different directors, fine. Get them to do their own flavor on the movie. But you have to have a general direction as to where each movie is going to go and where the trilogy as a whole is going to go. And I didn't feel they did that with The Rise of Skywalker. Just a huge, huge letdown for me. It really sucks that it's this low on my ranking, but it is. Number 43. Oh, God. Another really disappointing one. Glass. God damn it. I shouldn't have trusted M. Night, because we know that he has a spotty track record. I love Unbreakable. Unbreakable is like top 15 movie of all time for me. Split, I really enjoyed. I thought, and the trailers for Glass looked pretty good. I thought this movie had potential, and it did. I thought M. Night was going to pull it off, and he didn't. Not to me. This movie pretty much gets progressively worse as it goes along, and ultimately leads to an ending that I thought was awful. The treatment of one particular character, I'll just say Puddle. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Puddle. It was terrible. I mean, that was completely insulting. I don't know what he was thinking there. The beginning is really cool. There's like a fight scene in the beginning. I'm like, oh, all right, I'm in. If the rest of the movie is like this, I'm going to like it. Middle of the movie was fine. They try to kind of plant the seeds of doubt. Are these people really superheroes? But you're like, wait a minute. We saw them do these things. So yeah, of course they are. So they got close, but not quite. And then the ending, there's one twist that was okay, that I liked. Then there was another twist that was beyond stupid and took me out of the movie. And then followed by the Puddle thing. Just subverting expectations is not always a good thing. M. Night. I know he likes to do that. He always has to have this big twist, and he feels like, oh, so people don't expect this. This is going to make people mad, so I'm going to do it. Okay, so that doesn't exactly make a movie good. I mean, because they tease throughout the movie there's going to be this big payoff, this big battle scene at the end of the movie, and they don't do it. And that's subverting expectations, which can be good sometimes. In this case, it's like someone telling you they're going to take you out for a big steak dinner at, no, how about they're going to take you to Samba, which is an awesome meat like buffet, and then they end up taking you to McDonald's. So your expectations were subverted, but is it a good thing? I don't think so. And that's my feelings on Glass, is that he tried to be too cute with it and try to subvert expectations to the point where it just completely fell flat. 42. Yeah, this one was also pretty disappointing, but not as much because I didn't expect much from it. And that's Terminator Dark Fate. Early reviews for this movie were pretty positive, and I'm kind of surprised about that because I was not a big fan. First of all, they make a decision early in the movie, and if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. That pisses a lot of people off, including me. And a lot of people defend it, and they'll say it's really hard to get into specifics and not spoil this. I'm going to do the best I can through this whole video, not to spoil anything, but if I do, it's possible. I'm talking about 50 different movies, so who knows what's going to happen. In this movie, they make a decision at the beginning that basically took me out of the whole thing. Like, why would you do that? That was completely pointless. And then, it all, okay. So I don't want to say anything. It all starts over again. They stop Skynet in Terminator 2 because this movie retcons everything after Terminator 2. They stop Skynet. And then in this movie, they make the choice at the beginning, which if you've seen it, and then it all just starts back over again and they just slap a different name on it. The Terminators even look exactly the same as they did with Skynet. It just is a different company now. What are the chances of that? That makes absolutely no sense. It also completely undercuts the victories in T1 and T2, makes those movies completely pointless because they're basically starting over with new people and new names, but it really is just the same thing. It is. The action scenes were fine. I actually gave this movie a mixed positive review because the pacing was good. I had fun with it. Mackenzie Davis did a good job. Same with Arnold's character was the best thing in this movie. He had some really funny lines. He was really cool. The problem is some of the actual ideas with where they go with his character, I didn't exactly buy, and they didn't really make sense to me. So they kind of have a storyline where he basically becomes almost a human. Like he starts feeling like a human and thinking like a human, and I don't buy that. That doesn't make sense to me. Yes, they can learn, they can understand concepts that people feel, but they can't actually feel them themselves. So many weird things they did in this movie. The dialogue wasn't very good either. Really very, very predictable. I knew exactly who was going to survive and who was going to die at the end of the movie. Just another reboot, another Terminator movie that was disappointing. So there you have it. 41 is 21 Bridges. This movie was fine. The opening was actually quite good. There were some good, cool action scenes with some good gore. Not great, not a lot of gore, but like the violence worked for what the movie was, and it got me interested. Problem is, towards the end, it gets way too contrived and predictable and hokey. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. I knew that was going to happen. And particular characters, from the moment they come on screen, I know they're going to be bad. Like, okay, okay, they're bad. I mean, so obvious. They use all kinds of tropes, and it just gets so... People wouldn't make these decisions in real life, in this situation. Like, it kind of takes you out of it, but at the same time, it's predictable. So, into this movie, the second half kind of lost me a little bit, but I still had a decent time with it. Chadwick Boseman is a good leading man, and I enjoy his movies, so good enough time. It was barely just a positive review for me. Number 40 is Godzilla, King of the Monsters. I actually had a decent time with this movie. A lot of people hate it because of the human stuff, and the human stuff is really, really dull. It is. I don't give a shit about the human characters. I just want to see Godzilla kicking ass and fighting a bunch of other giant monsters. And I think we got that in this movie. We got enough of it. Maybe we could have used more. Definitely could have used more. But this movie promised Godzilla fighting a bunch of giant monsters, and that's what we got. I mean, it's really what we got. Take out all the human stuff, because that was really bad. And I wish they could just do away with humans and human storylines in Godzilla movies altogether. Barely even have them a part of it. Just have Godzilla running around fighting, King Kong or whoever. And I think there was enough fighting in this movie, enough big monster fights, and there were some really cool shots. The music was also good. I thought the score was good. Enough big monster fights to have enough enjoyment out of it, even if the human stuff was really, really bad. And it was. 39, another one that has a lot of problems, but I enjoyed, is Six Underground. It's a Netflix original starring Ryan Reynolds, directed by Michael Bay. So you pretty much know what you're getting into when you start watching this movie. And that's exactly what it was. It's a big, goofy, over-the-top action movie with so many stupid cuts, and this movie was not edited well. It was hard to watch with all the weird cuts and the way they were filming it. I'm like, oof. Especially in the beginning, the first car chase took way too long. And the first half in general was almost unbearable. I'm like, I might just turn this off. The second half actually gets pretty interesting. There's some really cool action scenes. These characters are charming. I mean, they're likable, even though they're killing a bunch of people, but they're killing bad people, so you're okay with it. And I had a good time with it. I really did. The second half was very entertaining, and it's Michael Bay. I mean, it's what you'd expect from a Michael Bay movie. It's not great cinema or anything like that, but I enjoyed it for what it was. Number 38. 38 is Escape Room. This movie would have been a lot higher if it wasn't for the ending. The first like hour and 20 minutes of this movie are quite good. Maybe a little less, maybe hour 15, hour 10. But I was actually really into it. The characters, hit or miss. But the actual, adventures they were going on, trying to get out of these escape rooms, trying to work together, and the stakes are real. These people can actually die. It's a real life, dangerous escape room, and that was fun. Obviously we've seen stuff like that before in Saw, or I heard about Cube, which I haven't seen yet, but we've seen similar things. But to me, it was a very entertaining, thrilling movie until the end, which just goes so stupid with sequel bait and trying to make this, this is really what was happening the whole time. Nah, I didn't buy it. There's no way. Why couldn't you just end it when I thought it ended? Because I thought it ended, I'm like, okay, this ending's not that bad. What's everyone talking about? Then they just go so stupid with it and trying to do way too much, and trying to set up a sequel in a way that did not work at all. Didn't work generically. It felt so forced. So this movie, it was fine, but the ending was a huge letdown. Number 37, speaking of letdowns, is Us. This movie disappointed the hell out of me. Not as much as Glass, but it was still pretty disappointing because Get Out is Jordan Peele's first movie, and it was quite good. Get Out is a very good movie. I think it's maybe a tiny bit overrated. I had problems with the third act, but it's still a damn good movie. This one, I had major issues with the third act. The first two acts are pretty good. The performances are good. I think Lupita Nyong'o, as much as I was disappointed with this movie, she should get nominated for this movie. She probably won't because it's a horror movie. Genre movies don't get much respect. But I think she should. She was fantastic. The guy from M'Baku, I can't remember his name right now, but Winston Duke. He was the dad. He was cool. And this is just about a regular family, and kind of, there's some allegories in this that I think could have been better, could have been portrayed better. I think they went so bonkers with it in the third act, and it just made so many things not add up to me. Like, okay, so wait a minute. If this is that, then how is that? It didn't add up. It didn't all come together for me in the end, even though the first 2/3 were pretty good. I thought there was some weirdly placed humor here and there, but the performances were good. And I really, really liked the home invasion stuff. That's when the movie was at its best. When the tethered family was in the real family's house and they were, kind of talking to them, that was actually genuinely pretty terrifying. But ever since, like, the first, this isn't really a spoiler, but from the point where the first tethered dies, it kind of goes off the rails. And then the big reveal I saw coming from a mile away. The first 10 minutes of this movie, okay, I'm like, okay, that's a big twist in the end. Because they do this trope where they show you a scene and then they cut away before you see the resolution to the scene, and then they cut back like everything's normal. I'm like, okay, so I know what's happening there, and everyone's like, it's such a big surprise. Nah, it wasn't. This movie, just so many weird things, so many things don't add up. It didn't come together for me, and it was too predictable for a movie like this. So pretty disappointing. Us. 36, and I feel like I'm the only one that was disappointed in this movie because most people love this movie. That's John Wick 3. I really like the first two. I think the first two are damn good for what they are. And I think the second one sets up the third one in such an organic way that it felt real. It doesn't feel like they're just setting up a sequel to pump out more sequels. And unfortunately, that's what this movie feels like. I feel like at the end of the movie, John Wick, I mean, okay, here's the thing with this movie. In the first two, John Wick is prepared, he's skilled, he's such a badass, and you genuinely believe that he's beating all these people and surviving all these crazy situations because he's prepared and a badass. And it feels somewhat realistic. In this movie, the shit that he survives, you realize how much plot armor he really has. You're like, okay, this is they took it too far with that. There's no way he could actually survive this, and it takes you out of the experience. And then the plot goes nowhere. The plot basically ends up exactly where we were at the end of 2, and then they kind of tease another sequel, and at this point it feels like they're just going in circles, and they're just trying to sequel bait, which is unfortunate because they did such a good job, like I said, at the end of 2, setting up this one. This one did not do the same thing. The action scenes were still great, and they took it even up another notch from the first 2. I'll give them credit for that. Half the stuff they do, I don't even know how they do it because it looks so real. If stunt people, CGI, some of it doesn't, like, how are they even doing that? But, Halle Berry was great in the scene she was in. She was only in like a couple scenes. I think people way overhyped her role. She was great when she was there, but she was only in like 20 minutes of the movie. Why couldn't she have shown up at the end? That would have been cool. But yeah, just John Wick. It got way too superhero-ish for me, kind of like what happens with Dom and Fast and Furious. I'm like, okay, that's much, especially at the end. He survives way too much shit in this movie, and he gets lucky way too many times, which I didn't feel happened in the first 2. So there you go. 35 is Jumanji: The Next Level. I had a lot of fun with this movie. I really did. I think the first one surprised a lot of people, including me, with how entertaining it was. But what you're missing a bit in this one is the freshness of it, which it's always going to happen when you have a sequel to a kind of a unique comedy like that. They change up the character dynamic. There's different people in different bodies now. I think some of that worked, some of that didn't. I think Kevin Hart playing an old man was hilarious. Excuse me. I think that The Rock playing Danny DeVito was a bit off. Him doing that accent the whole time felt a little weird to me. But it was entertaining from start to finish. I laughed a lot during this movie. It was maybe even funnier than the first one. But I think the adventure part was still there. Just some of the characters and people in characters' bodies didn't work quite as well as they did in the first one, and they were lacking a bit of the freshness and originality of the first one, which is bound to happen with a sequel like this. But damn entertaining, that's for sure. I need a sip of water. Hold on a second. All right. So number 34, Captain Marvel. This movie was fine. It was actually maybe even a little bit better than I expected because the trailers didn't sell me on this at all. The trailers were very bland. I thought her performance was going to be bad. And I don't think it was. I thought Brie Larson's performance was fine. She was okay. There were some moments where she did very well, some moments where she was really lacking. I think she did the kind of sarcastic, snarky stuff better because that's more similar to what she's like in real life. I think the more serious stuff was pretty bad. Like there's a moment in the movie where she's like, I don't even know who I am. And I kind of cringed at that. That was really bad delivery. So overall, she's okay, a bit wooden. Hopefully with time, she'll get better. I'm really rooting for her. I am, because it's a cool character. So hopefully she figures it out. But seemed to me in this movie, she wasn't quite there. The Skrulls, storylines with the Skrulls and Ben Mendelsohn's character, I really liked. That was really cool. Didn't really care as much about the Jude Law stuff, but that was fine. I mean, Annette Bening's character's performance was odd, to say the least, but this was entertaining for sure. Another issue I have, though, is that it felt like it was written by a bunch of different people. And then you go on IMDb and you look, and it was. There wasn't really a strong sense of narrative in this movie. There wasn't really anything they were heading towards. It was kind of just a bunch of scenes thrown together. And considering that, it actually came out pretty well. So, it wasn't a great movie or anything, but I enjoyed it. And I think Brie Larson was okay, not great. Certainly some characters that I like more, like Nick Fury. The de-aging on Nick Fury was incredible. It looked like they plucked him right out of the 90s. There was never any uncanny valley or anything like that with that. So I think this movie certainly did a lot of things right, did a lot of things wrong, but overall it was a fine experience. 33. This one was pretty disappointing too, and that's Lion King. The live action Lion King. I love the first one. The original Lion King is probably, to me, my favorite animated movie of all time. And the trailers look great for this one. And I was really looking forward to it. Jon Favreau's directing it, who's a great director. The cast is great. And then I actually watch it, and something felt off to me. CGI animation was incredible. You couldn't even, these look like real animals walking around. The problem is the emotion. There's no emotion. You can't show real animals emoting. And one particular scene that stands out to me is when Simba was supposed to be crying, and he just had the normal lion face. So it's much easier to do that with animated. With the action like the original, you can make them have all these goofy faces, and you can make them show emotion. You can't really do that with CGI animals. So for that reason, it kind of felt like it was missing a lot of the heart of the original. And some of the voice acting was fine. Some of it felt off. Like, no disrespect to Chiwetel Ejiofor. I think Jeremy Irons should have came back as Scar because James Earl Jones came back as Mufasa. I think those two should have been the two to come back. Everyone else was fine. The songs weren't as good as the original. It just, to me, it felt like a retread of the original, but not as good. But it was fine. So, I don't know. Yep, that's what I have to say about that. 32 is Pokemon Detective Pikachu. I enjoyed this movie more than I expected. I actually had quite a bit of fun with it. It's really predictable. From the beginning, you know what the final reveal is going to be. There's some contrivances and some goofy stuff, but I think Ryan Reynolds is awesome as Pikachu. That's like one of the perfect roles for him besides Deadpool. I think he did a really good job with that. I think is it Justice Smith, the main character's name? I'm not sure. He's fine. I think he was really annoying in Jurassic World 2. He was a little bit better in this, still not great. I didn't really pick up on a lot of references because I'm not a Pokemon person. So I probably missed a lot of stuff, probably went over my head. But I still enjoyed this movie for what it was, a fun little mystery adventure. And Ryan Reynolds, where can you go wrong with Ryan Reynolds? Number 31 is Happy Death Day to You. I enjoyed this just about as much as the first one, maybe a little bit less because it gets a little convoluted, but I had a lot of fun with this one. The first one was a surprise to me because I thought, this is going to be another one of those bad horror movies, and it's rated PG-13, so you feel like you're just trying to make money, and it was actually quite good. It was pretty unique considering that we've seen that type of storyline before, and the second one, thankfully, is not a retread. It goes in a completely different direction with it, and that surprised me, and I liked it. It almost goes more in a sci-fi direction as opposed to a horror direction, which is what the first one was. The second one is almost more Back to the Future 2-ish as opposed to a horror movie. And I was okay with that. Some of the stuff is a little goofy, obviously, but there is also some really interesting messages and some really interesting moral questions in this movie. Like, do you want this or do you want that? And sometimes you're not sure. But I had a good time with it. I really did. So Happy Death Day to You, a fun movie. It really was. Number 30 is Crawl. This movie is pretty good. It's about as good as it could have been considering the type of movie it is. It's a bunch of alligators in a house during a hurricane with this daughter trying to save her dad, and it was entertaining. It was scary at points, a little goofy at times, like with the stuff that they survived. Like, oh come on, they're really making it through this. But I had a good time with it. This movie knows exactly what it is. It's a simple horror movie with pretty realistic looking alligators. I don't think they were quite perfect. They were close, but I enjoyed it. I think the performances were quite good too, and you got a little bit of a feel for their relationship and their dynamic between the girl and her dad. So yeah, had a good time with this movie, even though definitely, it's cliched for sure at points, and there's definitely some goofy stuff, and it's a B movie for sure, but it knows that, and I think it pulled it off pretty well. So number 29 is Yesterday. I don't really have a ton to say about this movie because it's fine. I think Hamish Patel, I believe that's his name, the lead actor, was good. Lily James, his girlfriend, was probably even better. I mean, they're both great. I just think it's aside from the uniqueness of living in a world without the Beatles. I think they could have gone a little further with it. It's pretty surface level, pretty cliche. But I had a fun time with it. I don't really have any real big specific complaints with it. Just there wasn't anything really that blew me away either. So one of those fun musical. It's not really a musical. It's kind of a rom com type movies. Had a good time with it. Number 28 is Dragged Across Concrete. I expected this movie to be a lot better because a lot of people that I really trust and follow said this movie was great and it was in like their top 10 of the year. I didn't feel that way. I thought this movie was pretty boring through the first two-thirds of it. The third act was pretty good. I actually liked it. It was pretty intense with some good action scenes there. Problem is, it takes forever building up to it. It's not that bad because these characters are charming and interesting and somewhat likable, even though they're kind of dirtbags, but they're not terrible people. It's a lot of scenes of just sitting around, sitting in cars, eating food, and you're like, okay, let's get to the point here. This is taking way too long. I wish they could have had more of the stuff in the third act in it, but there's definitely merits to this movie. The performances by Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn were good. It took way too long to get to the point, in my opinion. Number 27, speaking of too long to get to the point, Ad Astra. I respect this movie a lot more than I enjoy it or like it. The cinematography is great. Brad Pitt's performance is great, and there's some really interesting messages in here. The problem is it takes so long to get to the point. It is a slog. I mean, there's a lot of just floating in space with him saying, "Today my heartbeat is 29." I don't even know. But it just, oh, come on, seriously. There was some interesting stuff, some really intriguing, intense scenes, but they didn't really have anything to do with the rest of the movie. They were good, but it seemed kind of weird. And then the payoff, the ending, also was pretty disappointing because it's like you did all this, made me sit through all this, and then there's basically no payoff. So I felt had me leaving this movie feeling empty. Yes, I respect it. It's well made for sure, well acted, but I just don't really care to watch it again. It's so slow and there's almost no payoff. Number 26 is Lego Movie 2, the second part. I had a lot of fun with this. The first one I don't love as much as everyone else. I don't put it up on this pedestal as like one of the best animated movies. I think that's a little ridiculous. I thought it was fine. I mean, there was nothing really that unique to me. I think it was almost too jokey. And it wasn't exactly clear what they were doing with the messages and the themes of it. And the human stuff, I didn't care for at all. I thought that just took the story in a weird direction. It kind of made things way more confusing. This movie, I actually enjoyed probably more than the first one. I think it's maybe even funnier. I remember laughing more in this one than I did in the first. And I think that you're not hit with so much all at once. I think the songs were good for the most part. And there were some little fun twists in there that worked pretty well too. And the human stuff again is what I have the issue with. I wish they wouldn't do that in these movies. I don't know why they have that in there. It makes things just so much more confusing and difficult to put everything together. But I think this movie had more clear themes and messages compared to the first one. So I think it was pretty good. I did. I enjoyed it for what it was. Number 25 is Booksmart. A lot of people have this movie much higher up on their list, and that's fine. It just didn't necessarily resonate with me as much as it would other people, and I completely understand that. I think it was funny for sure, well acted, but aside from a few key factors, a few key plot lines, it's the same. It's a very surface level high school, about to graduate high school. Now we got to do all these things that we missed out on. We've seen that before. It's a pretty surface level high school movie. Besides a few key things, but it just didn't resonate with me as much as it would most people, or not most people, but other people, and that's fine. Nothing. People acting like this movie is so revolutionary and like one of the best comedies in years. I don't see it that way. I think it was good. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. It was hilarious, but it was really nothing new to me. Booksmart. So 24 Hobbs and Shaw. This movie is so stupid in all the right ways. It is over the top. It is goofy, but I love it because The Rock and Jason Statham are so cool and so likable and so charming. And these are the two best characters I think in the Fast and Furious universe right now. They have such a good chemistry and such a good rapport with each other. I do wish they would have kind of they went back to the bickering stuff, which was funny, but I mean, you kind of did this already in Fast 8. I wish they would have gotten over that a little quicker. It seemed a little ridiculous that they kept going with it, but it was fine. The villain was over the top as hell, but I forgave it because it's Idris Elba. Oh, Vanessa Kirby is awesome in this movie. She's like my new celebrity crush. She's great. I mean, she probably stole the show for me as Shaw's sister. This movie was, again, they went on probably a little bit too long in the third act. It got so ridiculous with the helicopter stuff, but I had so much fun with it, and I like these characters so much, and I like this franchise so much that I really, really enjoy this movie for what it was. Number 23, Rocketman. I didn't think I'd like this movie as much as I did. I know you're thinking maybe it should be higher. It's just not really my thing. It's not. But what I did like about it, though, is it's not the cliche musical biopic. There are a lot of musical biopics that are very similar, and they're all by the numbers. This was not that. This had more of a fantasy element to it, which I was okay with because they had it the whole time. That's that when they do weird stuff like that. I don't like when they put it in at the end, but when they have it the whole time, I think it really worked for what this movie was. And I was surprised how much I enjoyed it. It's still, again, not the type of thing that I tend to rate super high or have really high on my list, but Taron Egerton as blanking on his name right now. Anyway, he was great. Elton John. As Elton John, Taron Egerton as Elton John was great, and it was fun, entertaining. I just, again, not the type of thing that I tend to gravitate towards. 22 is Good Boys. I laughed a lot in this movie. This movie was hilarious, and the reason this one's a little higher than Booksmart, and it's because it resonates with me more, because I related to a lot of the stuff in this movie. Like these middle schoolers, this is exactly how middle schoolers act. I'm like, okay, I remember doing something like that. I can totally relate to that. And there's some absolute laugh out loud scenes in the movie, like the highway scene with the doll. I'm not going to give away exactly what happens, but I lost it at that. I was laughing, having fun, big smile on my face from beginning to end. Is it a cliche comedy? Yeah, kind of. I mean, they have the thing where they have the tension towards the end, and they're like go their separate ways, and then they make things up before the end. Yeah, we've seen that a lot of times, but the fact that these kids were so funny and doing so many things that I remember doing in middle school, that's why I enjoyed it so much. 21 is The Irishman. This movie was good. This is another one that I respect and appreciate a lot more than I like or enjoy. The performance, De Niro, Pacino, Pesci, all great. Better than they have been in a while. The problem is this movie's 3 hours long. It is way too long. It's way too long, but at the same time, you feel like you're missing part of it. So that was kind of the thing that didn't exactly work for me. There's things that you feel like you're missing, and then there's also some scenes that feel like they're unnecessary. So they could have tightened it, put more relevant things in there, or maybe turned it into a short series or something. The performances were good. The story was interesting, and it really picked up towards the end. But I had major issues with the length and just so many scenes that weren't really that interesting. Oh, also the CGI with Robert De Niro stopping the guy was horrendous. Like that completely, oh my God, I can't believe that got through. Like, how did they let that into the actual cut of the movie? That was terrible. But the rest of it was very well made, even though it's not something that I really care to watch again. Number 20. Before I get to my top 20, I do need another sip of water. I apologize. 20 is Zombieland Double Tap. I was surprised at how good this movie was. The first one I love, and I just watched it fairly recently in preparation for this, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. The first movie is like a Guardians or Deadpool or a Thor Ragnarok type movie for me, where it's so fun, so funny, so unique, and I just had such a good time with it. Then I'm like, okay, there's no way this sequel is not going to let me down, and it didn't. It was actually quite entertaining. I mean, there's a few. It's not as good as the first because there's a few side characters that kind of gimmicky and like, okay, we didn't really need that. But there's also a few side characters that were really good, particularly Zoe Deutsch's character, and I thought she was going to be really annoying. From the trailers, I'm like, just the really stupid girl. Like, I feel like this is a weird decision, but she was actually really funny in the movie. She really made it work. I was surprised about that, pleasantly surprised, and I had a really good time with this movie. I wish they would have had more of the action and more of the zombie killing in it. But, I really love being with these characters and in this universe, so I had a really good time with Zombieland 2. Number 19 is Motherless Brooklyn. I like this movie. It wasn't perfect. It was pretty slow. I mean, there are times where they kind of deviated from the main storyline. You're like, all right, let's get back on track here. But Ed Norton gives a great performance as a character that has you think that he has Tourette's, and you think that would get a little old and gimmicky. Like, okay, that's enough. But actually, I thought it was pretty funny. I thought he utilized it pretty well, and I believe Ed Norton directed this movie too. So I liked it. It was a cool mystery, and there were some really nice themes and messages in there. But it sometimes slowed a little too much, and the ending payoff was it was okay. It was a little disappointing to me, but a movie that I really respect, and I had a surprisingly good time with it. It was funny. I mean, a lot funnier than I expected, and the storyline was interesting when they stuck to it. So that's why it's where it is. So number 18 is Spider-Man Far From Home. I like this movie. I think I liked it even more than Homecoming. I don't love Homecoming as much as most people. I think a lot of people that have Homecoming in their top 5 MCU movies, I think that's ridiculous. I think Homecoming's fine, but it was really small scale, really simple, really safe. So this movie, I think, was better because, first of all, the action scenes were a huge step up. The third act was much better. The visuals were great. One particular scene involving Jake Gyllenhaal's character, Mysterio, and Spider-Man was incredible. I'm like, wow, this is like some of the best visuals I've ever seen in an MCU movie, and it's in a Spider-Man movie. You would not expect that. Some real trippy stuff in there, and I enjoyed it. I think that the twist, honestly, if you don't know that, I'm just going to say it. If you don't know that Mysterio's the villain, then sorry, but he is. And yes, we knew it was coming, but when it actually happened, when everyone starts disappearing, that was pretty cool. The exposition scene, I was surprisingly okay with because Gyllenhaal is so charismatic, and it makes somewhat sense when you're making big toast. Like, you did, and you did this, and you did that. I was okay with it. A lot of people hated that big exposition scene. My big issue with this movie is there was some goofy stuff in it, like the scene, the whole storyline with Tony leaving the glasses to Spider-Man was a bit weird to me. He's a 16-year-old kid, or 17. I don't know. He's not even an adult yet. And you leave these very, very powerful glasses with him where you can literally send, a fucking missile from space, hit anyone or anything you want. And you give that to a high school kid. And there's this one scene where he almost accidentally blows up his peer, his fellow student on the bus. Like, okay, that's a little weird where you went with that. The whole glasses thing was odd to me. There was some humor that was a little off-putting, but other than that, I had a good time with this movie, and I think I definitely enjoyed it more than Homecoming, even though the villain was not as good as Michael Keaton. I mean, who's going to Michael Keaton's Vulture besides Thanos and Killmonger? But yeah, I really enjoy Far From Home. Number 17 is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This one was also good, but not as good as I wanted it to be. Not as good as a lot of people said it was. I thought it was quite slow, and a lot of people were okay with that because they were so into this universe and so into these characters that they didn't mind the slow pace. I didn't. The slow pace got to me a little bit. I'm like, oh man, this is really dragging here. The third act, funny enough, a lot of people have issues with the third act. I love it. It went so crazy and bonkers with it that I enjoyed the hell out of it. And that's the kind of thing that I look for in a Tarantino movie, is that final act. So crazy, and he takes so many creative liberties with it, hence the name Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's a fairy tale. I mean, it really is. It's a fantasy. It's not a biopic. It's not a biography. I mean, it's not a documentary. So he's allowed to do this stuff. And the way he did it, I thought was entertaining as hell in third act and extremely satisfying too. Again, the first two acts, there were some great moments in there. It really took a while to get going for me. I didn't really see a real narrative there. I didn't really see like where they're going with the story. So that's my main issues with it. But the third act was awesome, and the performances by Brad Pitt and DiCaprio obviously were great. Number 16 is Knives Out. This one was a bit disappointing for me, even though I thought it was very enjoyable and it was a good movie, but I don't think it's a top 10, top 5 movie of the year like a lot of people are saying, because I don't think it's nearly as clever or inventive as Rian Johnson thinks it is. They reveal a big thing early in the movie, and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting direction to take. I wonder if that's going to work out, and I don't think it completely did, because the final reveal was underwhelming. It was like, okay, yeah, well, I mean, obviously, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it was fun. I think Ana de Armas in the lead was great. I think Daniel Craig as the secondary lead was great. And a lot of people say this movie is an ensemble. It is. Ana de Armas is absolutely the main character, and Daniel Craig is absolutely the secondary character. And he does this accent in the movie that it's pretty off-putting at first. You're like, what is this? He's doing like a Southern accent, but as it goes along, it works. Somehow he makes it work, even though it seems so weird at first. The movie, it just isn't I wasn't into the mystery. It wasn't as clever as I wanted it to be. And the final reveal was underwhelming. I think they could have and should have done things a little bit differently, but I still had a good time with it. And the performances were great, and it was a fun movie for sure. Number 15 is a movie I just watched last night, The Report. I think this is a good movie. I do. It's a lot of people sitting around talking for 2 hours, but it's about as interesting as people sitting around talking for 2 hours could be, because the central premise is that he's looking into this, all the torturing that people did, that the CIA did and covered up, after the events of 9/11, and trying to expose it and all the, roadblocks that come with that. So I thought this was a important movie. I thought it was a good movie that, had some good messages, and it's good for people to see this stuff and for this to be brought into the light. I think Adam Driver was great as always, but again, it's nothing really. I've seen movies like this before. It's nothing that new, nothing that groundbreaking, and it is as interesting as it was. It is just a lot of people sitting around talking for 2 hours, and that can get old. But I still thought it was a quite a good movie. 14, a movie that a lot of people had problems with. I don't really get it. I thought it was a good movie. I really liked it, actually. I think the performances were great. I think the performances is really what carries this movie. Charlize Theron, Nicole Kidman, Margot Robbie, John Lithgow, they're all perfect. And some of the makeup they do, particularly with Charlize and with John Lithgow, making them look like Megyn Kelly, and I can't remember the name of the guy, the head of Fox that John Lithgow was playing, but they did such an amazing job of making them look like those characters that you actually believed they were those characters. Like, how is this even possible that this is someone else? Especially Megyn Kelly. I mean, Charlize looked exactly like her, sounded exactly like her. It was incredible. I thought the side characters did a good job. Is the movie a little surface level? Yeah, I think it was a solid movie with some great performances. Let's go. Oh, looks like I'm losing connection here. Whatever. 13 is Shazam with the exclamation point. Shazam. I enjoyed Shazam from beginning to end. This is a movie that is so funny. It is so heartwarming. I was surprised with how heartwarming it was with the messages about family involving Billy Batson, and then his mom, the issues with his mom, and then adjusting to the foster family, which are much better parents, much better people. And it took him a long time to realize that. I thought Zachary Levi is great playing a 14-year-old in an adult's body. I thought he was perfect. My only issue with that is, yes, he seemed like a kid in an adult's body, but he didn't seem like that kid in an adult's body. He seemed like a different person. And I didn't quite buy that, because Billy Batson as a kid and Zachary Levi's Billy Batson didn't seem like the same person, even though he did a really good job portraying a kid, what a kid would be like in an adult's body. It just didn't seem like that kid in an adult's body. I think Jack Dylan Grazer as his friend, his the other kid that was in that foster family was awesome. I think Mark Strong as the villain, is he cliche? Yeah, but he also did such a good job. I mean, it's Mark Strong. He's a great actor. And there are certainly some tonal issues with this movie. It didn't quite have the tone right all the time. I mean, it's a horror director, and the horror scenes were good, but it didn't necessarily fit in with the tone of the rest of the movie. But the scenes themselves were still good, so I'm kind of mixed on that. And yeah, I really enjoyed this movie a lot more than I thought. It's the best DCEU movie that I've seen. I've not seen Wonder Woman yet, or Batman versus Superman. Wonder Woman, I'm going to watch before the new one for sure. I just, for whatever reason, I haven't gotten around to it yet. But Shazam was a pleasant surprise to me. Number 12, oh man, another pleasant surprise, Longshot. This movie was awesome. I mean, this is about as good, to me, about as good as rom-coms can get. Because the central premise is Seth Rogen used to be babysitted by Charlize Theron, and now they're like getting together. And, on the surface, on paper, you're like, there's no fucking way that's going to work. But it does. Somehow you buy Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron would actually be together, and you're like, somehow the movie convinces you of that. And there's also some good messages in there about it is a politically driven movie because she's a politician, but it doesn't take one side or the other. And there's a cool thing at the end that happens that kind of makes characters realize, it's okay to have different political beliefs. Like Seth Rogen has a friend in the movie that he didn't know this whole time had a different belief than him, and they had been friends this entire time. So it was a really cool message there. It was funny as hell. I remember a couple scenes, particularly when Seth Rogen comes out with this really goofy outfit, that I absolutely lost it at. And their chemistry between Charlize and Seth Rogen is shockingly great. Like, it will surprise. If you haven't seen this movie, watch it. Longshot is awesome. I mean, I can't even say enough good about this movie. Is it a pretty cliche, rom-com? Yeah, for the most part. But because their chemistry is so good and because of the messages in it, I think I liked it more than most rom-coms. Number 11, also I just saw last night, is Richard Jewell. I thought this movie was very good. I really like Richard Jewell. The villains are a little over the top. Yeah, kind of. I mean, they seem, especially Olivia Wilde's character, seem a little cartoony. Yeah, for sure. But, at the center of this movie is Sam Rockwell, and obviously the main character, it's Richard Jewell. I don't remember the name of the actor. He's a new guy on the scene. If you know, let me know, but I can't remember his name. He was great. I mean, he should get nominated for an Oscar. He really should. I completely bought into it. I bought into his relationship with his mother and his relationship with Sam Rockwell's character, his lawyer, and that was just such a touching movie, and movie that made me feel uncomfortable at times. Like, man, they really did all this, and it turns out they did, and it was, man, I really liked this movie. I really did. Yeah, the villains, issues with the villains, but overall, just such a important movie, important messages that we just don't believe headlines all the time. Look into things and, find out the actual facts before you jump on people. I think that's the big message of this movie. And because they can go through a lot of terrible shit. Richard Jewell and his mom went through some terrible shit in this movie because people were jumping on him for something that he did not do. So that's I think what the real appeal of this movie was, that message and the relationship between Richard Jewell and Sam Rockwell's character and Richard Jewell and his mom. Here we go into the top 10. I'm going to snag another drink of water here. Into the top 10, we got Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. The Mr. Rogers movie with Tom Hanks is my number 10. This movie just made me feel so good. And that's exactly what it was trying to do. Does it do anything that new or unique? Not really, but it works so well because it's Mr. Rogers and because it's Tom Hanks. And the main character is not Mr. Rogers. The main character is another guy, and he goes through this interesting arc in this movie that we've seen a million times, yes, but it works so much better because it's Mr. Rogers and because it's Tom Hanks. And this will get you in the feels, man. Just such a touching movie, and they pulled it off very well for what it was. Number 9, I can't believe I have this movie this high. Doctor Sleep. I love Doctor Sleep. I don't know if I quite say love it. I really liked it. Much more than I expected. I expected this movie to be okay. I mean, the trailers were good, but I still didn't buy into it. Usually horror sequels like this after a long time don't work out, and it's obviously different people working on it. I wasn't sure how this was going to be. The Shining is like an all-time horror movie to me, but we get to Doctor Sleep, and I really liked it. I did. Ewan McGregor is great as a main character. I can't remember the little girl's name, but she was really good too, especially for a child actor. She was great. But the real scene stealer to me in this one was Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat. Wow. I mean, she's like one of the best villains of the year to me. Just so intimidating and terrifying, but at the same time kind of alluring and sexy. It's like, whoa, like this is an incredible character here. And she and her group, they do some absolutely unspeakable, terrifying things. There's this one scene in this movie that involves Jacob Tremblay's character. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But one of the most disturbing scenes I've ever seen in a horror movie. I heard people walked out of that scene. It was brutal. I can't not going to necessarily give away everything if you still want to see it, but that is a rough scene, and I'm not easily like, I'm not squeamish or anything like that. I don't get scared, or stuff doesn't really get to me as far as violence and gore and stuff like that. But man, that was a rough scene to watch. And the third act goes a little goofy, but then something almost happens. I'm like, oh, please don't do that. But then they come backtrack on it, and it was okay. I think a couple characters went out in ways that were a little underwhelming to me. But I really, the supernatural stuff, I was totally okay with. They pulled it off. The performances were great. And the themes of this movie, there's some scenes early on that I didn't expect involving Ewan McGregor's character that were really personal and really touching. And I'm like, that you actually learn why he gets his nickname too in the name of the movie as well from that. So I really like Dr. Sleep. It's got to be my favorite horror movie of the year. It definitely is. Dr. Sleep is my number 9. Number 8 is Fighting with My Family. I have been wanting to watch this movie for a long time. Finally got around to seeing it something like a week ago or so, maybe even less. But I enjoyed the hell out of this movie from beginning to end. The Rock is only in a couple scenes, which I did not expect. I mean, he's like top billed on IMDb, but it was totally okay because you follow Florence Pugh's character of Paige, or Paige isn't actually her real name. That's what she changes it to when she goes into the WWE, but you follow her character, and there's some things that happen early on in the movie that were a little bit predictable to me, but at the same time, they take this sports biopic in a different direction that you've never really seen before, and the performances were great. I think that I'm not really a WWE fan. I've kind of given it shit in the past, mainly because I did real wrestling. I wrestled in high school and in middle school, but I think that this kind of it puts the WWE and what they go through in their training regimen, it puts that in kind of a new light, and you realize, yes, it's scripted, but these people also need to go through some shit, and they need to be in really good shape. It's rigorous. It's not easy what they do. So it gave me kind of a whole new respect for that, which I think was really cool, and it was also surprisingly funny. This movie had some very hilarious moments, especially from the dad played by Nick Frost. And yeah, I just, it's a biopic, but I think it was a little different than most ones, even though some of the things in there are cliche, but they took some different directions. And I think it was pretty unique. It was very funny. So Fighting with My Family is my number 8. Number 7 is not fun or funny, but it's a really good movie. And that's Uncut Gems. Uncut Gems is very uncomfortable, and I think that's what they were aiming for when they made it. They want to take you on a thrill ride you've never been on before, where you're like trying to catch your breath, especially towards the end. I was like, oh my God, when that movie ended, I had to take a second to come down from it. Like, holy shit, I've never experienced anything like this before. Is it something that I really want to experience again? I don't think so, because people call this anxiety the movie, and that is very true. It makes you feel kind of gross and uncomfortable throughout it, but that was what they were going for. Adam Sandler's character, his performance is shockingly good. I mean, you think of Adam Sandler as just this goofy guy, like, and all the weird voices that he does. But, he was incredible in this. I couldn't believe it. And from beginning to end, he makes these bad decisions. But at the same time, he's something kind of endearing about him. So you root for him and you hope he does the right thing. And you hope things end well for him, but they're probably not going to. Just such a crazy ride of a movie from beginning to end that I probably don't care to rewatch, but it gave me an experience I've never really had with a movie before. Number 6 is Joker. Joker is another one that doesn't make you feel very good, and I probably won't watch it very often, but Joaquin Phoenix's performance is incredible. I think that this movie has some very relevant messages about, classism and what can happen to these people that if you don't, give them the help they need. So I think that's a great message to put in a movie. And, they follow Joaquin from beginning to end, which I think was perfect for the movie they were making. There are some really, really intense scenes in this movie. And I wish there was a little more killing. And that sounds weird, but it's a Joker movie. And I wish they would have gone a little bit further. People say this movie is really violent, and it is not. There's only like a few kills in it. I wish they would have done more of that, seeing a little bit more of him, being the Joker, at least towards the end. But, I think other than that, and the fact that I didn't love every single decision they made, I think this movie is really, really good. It's mainly because of the performance, the messages, the score is incredible too. And there a few things were left up to interpretation, which I also didn't love, but this movie it's an amazing film that I probably won't rewatch because it doesn't make me feel very good, but that's what it's going for. And it's also a really important movie. And Joaquin Phoenix will get nominated for Best Actor and will probably win, to be honest. Number 5 is Jojo Rabbit. I love Jojo Rabbit. There's a few issues I have with it is the tone. I don't think Taika Waititi balanced the tone perfectly the entire time. There's a couple scenes that were really serious and done well, but it didn't seem like they quite fit in. Other than that, he does such a good job it's a very satirical movie, and he also plays Hitler in it in such a hilarious way. And it has such a good message about hate, and because it's about this kid that, thinks he's a Nazi, but he's not really, because he doesn't understand what it all is. He just kind of wants to be a part of something. And then his mom is keeping a Jewish person in the house, and he starts to become friends with her and realizes, oh, wait, maybe I was wrong all along. And it's just such a cool message. And the way that Taika directs it with, him talking to Hitler, fake Hitler all the time, it's his idea of who Hitler is, which is actually really cool. This movie was so heartwarming, so hilarious, just all the things I wanted it to be. And even though I had a tiny bit of issues with the tonal balances, I thought the performance, the kid, I can't remember the kid's name, but his performance was great. Scarlett Johansson was great as the mom. Again, Taika Waititi as Hitler was hilarious in the perfect way that he needed to be for this movie. You wouldn't think a movie like this would be as good as it is, but it was. It was really, really good. Number 4 is Toy Story 4. I can't believe how much I love this movie. I really did. The first 3 to me are basically the perfect trilogy. And I think all these movies are really, really close in quality. In my opinion, they're all like around 8 out of 10s. And I think Toy Story 3 ended it so perfectly. At least it ended Andy's story so perfectly. And I'm thinking, like most people, I don't think they should do another one because the trilogy, it is what it is. Leave it alone. And there's no reason to do anything else because it ended perfectly. Little did I know, they had more to do, particularly with Woody's character. And I think what they do with his character, a lot of people didn't like it in this movie, and they think he acted out of character. I disagree. I think he made a perfect decision at the end of the movie, and I think it made perfect sense. And there's interesting messages about moving on, and because he didn't really, his new owner, I guess, didn't like him as much as Andy did. So he kind of has to find his place in the world. And there's some funny-ass new characters in this movie as well. Ducky and Bunny, played by Key and Peele, and then Duke Kaboom, played by Keanu Reeves, was hilarious. This is probably the funniest Toy Story movie of all of them. So so much fun with it. The villain was even good too. sympathetic villain that you understood where she was coming from and where they went with her made perfect sense. So Forky was awesome, which I thought was a concept that was weird, but they pulled it off. So many things that I didn't expect would be as good as they are in this movie. They made it work. And it was funny. It was entertaining. It was heartwarming. My only issue is I wish they would have done a little bit more with the side characters. Like, we barely got anything from Buzz and Jesse and Bullseye and like Mr. Potato Head and Pam and all them. I wish we would have gotten more from them. We only get like a few lines each from some of those characters. So missed out on that. But at the same time, it's not about them. It was Woody's story. And I would absolutely welcome another movie with the rest of the characters and what they do next. So I can't believe how much I liked it. There was no way going in. But what can I say? Love to win. This one was no. Number 3, the Peanut Butter Falcon. This movie was awesome. I saw a trailer for this and I'm like, okay, this looks like a fun, heartwarming, funny movie. And it was, but it was way more. I love this movie way more than I expected. I had a giant, goofy smile on my face. Hilarious. It was, the relationship between these two characters, Zach and Shia LaBeouf's character, the adventures that they go on, and, the conversations they have just really hit you right here, man. And, Shia LaBeouf does a great job. The kid, I can't remember his name is Zach also. I can't remember his last name, but Zach plays Zach in the movie. He was, as the kid with, he was great. Dakota Johnson wasn't in a ton of it, but I liked her too. And the adventures they go on, just so much fun from beginning to end. And they mix the tones of, they mix the humor in with the serious stuff very well. My only issue is it got a little too fantastical towards the end. Like when he picks the guy up, that was a bit much. And they almost did something at the end that would have really soured it for me. But they backtracked. They went away from it. They didn't do it. I'm like, okay, that's the right choice. That wouldn't have felt right here. That's not the message of this movie. And the message is, to let him kind of do his thing to a certain extent. And there were some interesting, philosophical discussions about that between Shia's character and Dakota Johnson's character, which I thought were really intriguing and just, so much fun from beginning to end. So many moments that just made me smile and, tear up. I had really, really adored this movie, Peanut Butter Falcon. Number 2, call me a Marvel shill, whatever. Number 2 is Avengers Endgame. The more I watch this movie, the more I love it. When I first watched it, I was like, what the hell? Sorry, that just distracted me. I got a notification on my computer. When I first watched it, I wasn't sure because there was so much going on. So many things happened there. And I was like, okay, I knew I really liked it, but I wasn't sure how much I liked it. On rewatches, I like this movie more and more. It's so emotional. There's so many great character moments in this movie. It's too many to count. And it absolutely needed to be 3 hours, maybe longer. So many great character moments, so many payoffs. You get closure. You get, I don't want to give it away, but someone gets closure with his dad. Someone gets closure with his mom in ways that you would have not expected based on things that happened in the past. The second act is probably the worst one, but it's still quite interesting with what they do with it. The first act is shockingly good, considering it's just kind of them moping around and then trying to figure out what they're going to do after the catastrophic events of Infinity War. But I really liked it because you got some great character moments out of that. And this is one of the best acted movies in the franchise, if not the best acted. It's 3 hours long and a big blockbuster movie. It's shockingly intimate with some of these great character moments and these great payoffs. And the third act, God damn it. The third act is some of the best stuff I've ever seen in a movie action-wise. It is just so awesome, and I had so much fun with it, and people were like standing up or on the edge of their seat watching the third act because it was so entertaining. It was so cool, so huge. The spectacle was just incredible with that. It was a major, major payoff, and God, was it a payoff. It was great. You get endings to character storylines that were perfect. You get endings to other character storylines that were perfect. Every character whose storyline ended in this movie in one way or another ended just about as well as it could have. They tease the future for some other characters. God, the more I think about this movie, the more I love it. And it really is a love letter to all the people who have followed this franchise from beginning to end, like myself, and followed the other 22 movies. And it's a culmination of all that, and it's fan service in all the right ways because all this stuff was set up. Unlike Rise of Skywalker, this movie did fan service right. It was earned. They built up to this stuff, and when they did it, it felt earned, and it felt like they really did it. I mean, like, it felt real, felt generic. Not generic. It felt organic through the storyline, and I like certain moments in this movie that people were absolutely cheering about. So many great things. It is a little bit slow in the first two acts, and I can understand people, especially people that aren't as into these characters and into this universe and this franchise as I am, that they didn't really like the first two acts. I can get that, but at the same time, it's not really for those people. I mean, you can't jump into a season finale and then complain because you don't know who these people are. You know, somehow after all these years, they still managed to do new things with these characters and develop them even further and give them new things to do. And I was just so happy with that. But number one, my favorite movie of 2019 is for sure Ford versus Ferrari. I loved Ford versus Ferrari from beginning to end. It was so entertaining. It's a big blockbuster movie, but it's also kind of an Oscar type movie because the performances are so good from Matt Damon and Christian Bale. They should get nominated, but they probably won't because they're both being pushed for lead actor, which I think is weird. They'll probably split the vote there, so I don't see that happening. But for a movie about racing cars, and I'm not really a car person myself. I'm not a racing fan, but this movie just had me floored from beginning to end. The car racing scenes were incredible. I mean, they're some of the best, sports type scenes I've ever seen in a movie. Absolutely riveting. And for a movie about racing cars, it's surprisingly intimate. There are some great emotional moments. There are some great human moments in this movie about friendship and family. And there's a great message in this movie about, the little guys versus the corporation and conflicting interests. And Josh Lucas's character is a total dick, but you also kind of understand what he's doing because he thinks that what's best for this company is something else than what Bale and Damon thinks is best for this company. So you got some interesting, storylines and interactions there, and some stuff that will piss you off, but it also makes perfect sense within the movie and the messages they're trying to portray. And towards the end, something happens that I didn't expect at all because I don't know the real story. Something happens towards the end. I'm like, it put me off a little bit at first, but then I thought about it. I'm like, okay, that's actually totally fitting. This movie shows from beginning to end that racing, as cool as it is, and we're just sitting in the theater watching some experience. For them, it's not all fun and games. This is a serious thing, and it can change on a dime. I don't really have any complaints about this movie other than I just don't rate. It won't be in like my top movies of all time because I tend to put like more ambitious movies, probably usually not based on a true story, things that take a bunch of directions they don't expect. Those are the type of movies that I usually love most and put up, towards the top of my list. But this one was my favorite movie of the year, and it was just about as good as it could have been. I thought it was going to be good, but not this good. Ford versus Ferrari, God, just absolutely blew me away from start to finish with the character interactions, the emotional moments, the racing scenes. It was all great. And there you have it, folks. Whew, it took a lot longer than I expected. About an hour and 20 minutes. I have never done a video that's anywhere close to this long before, but hopefully for the one or two of you that watch, and hopefully some of you will watch later down the line, hopefully you got at least something out of this. And I'm back. I'm going to be doing more videos for sure. What context, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm going to be doing something. And I hope you guys stick around. A lot of you stayed subscribed to me, which is really cool. Spread the word. And I don't know what my next video after this is going to be. Maybe I'll do like a top movies of the decade. I think that's something that sounds pretty cool that I'd like to do. So, thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.